And right now we'd like to welcome in Tom Whatley, a retired police detective, also an expert fraud investigator, but that's a topic for a different day. Tom, it's great to have you with us here.
Thank you.
We had planned on talking to you about this issue with sanctuary cities and the role that local law enforcement has had to take on because the feds aren't doing their job when it comes to deportations. But we also wanted to talk to you about the situation in Chattanooga.
Certainly.
Since you served as a police officer for a number of years. Now, we've had a lot of conversation today about this claim that this is a domestic act of terrorism. Then the FBI sort of seemed to back away from that assessment. Why is there this disagreement going on right now?
Well, sometimes when police agencies are doing an investigation of this magnitude, the press is very demanding to get a statement as quick as they can. And sometimes what happens is they'll put it out there as quick as they can, and then it's just fluid. It changes. They probably did not know whether it was domestic terrorism or not. And as things changes, they may be able to link it to different factions.
So what's going on right now in the investigation? Does it change if it is an act of terrorism versus if it's not?
Well, I think your federal authorities are going to be involved. Your Joint Terrorism Task Force is going to be involved, which is comprised of local, state, and federal authorities. Each one of them brings a different element as far as resources to to utilize in the investigation. And you're going to be seeing several hundred investigators on this case.
All right, and you know this is often a situation where there is a lot of coordination between local and federal law enforcement. And so let's transition now and talk about this issue. We have a clip here when it comes to illegal immigration. There's been a recent discussion between Donald Trump and Rick Perry. They sparred about the role of state, local, and federal government on immigration enforcement. Let's take a listen.
I will try to get that to you momentarily, but
essentially Rick Perry said that Mr. Trump didn't know what he was talking about. Trump blamed Rick Perry for Texas not doing enough. But actually, okay, let's have it. We have it ready. Let's go ahead and take a listen.
Donald Trump, I don't think he understands the challenge, obviously.
Governor Perry did a terrible job. He did a terrible job.
He was the governor of Texas, totally failed at the border.
My bet is that Mr. Trump doesn't know that.
But, to Rick Perry's point, there has been a lot of burden put on local law enforcement to deal with this when you have, I'm sure you've seen it, where somebody's been deported a number of times and they somehow wind up back in the United States.
Correct. And a lot of times what the misnomer with the general public is if someone has been deported 4, 5, 6, 7 times, what they don't realize is that typically has not gone through the typical due process system. A lot of times it's called a VR, which is a volunteer return, and that cuts out a lot of paperwork. The federal government has been accused of perhaps abusing that sometimes because they work in numbers. They have to deal with a lot of people at the same time, and it's easy if they get a volunteer return just to get them back where they belong. Sometimes they're on a no-fly list. I've spoken ad nauseum with an expert up in Pittsburgh, Brian Crow, about this, and sometimes they'll try and get them on a no-fly list and utilize that method, to keep the real hardened criminals from coming in.
We keep hearing Donald Trump make the promise that he's going to build a wall and he's going to make Mexico pay for it, and you hear other GOP candidates say it's unrealistic, it's not going to happen. In your opinion, is it unrealistic?
Well, without me trying to politicize and I look at, because it starts...
Well, looking at it from an enforcement point of view.
From an enforcement point of view, because it starts out as civil. Typically, it's a civil process when illegal aliens are here in the deportation process. But then we get into the criminal element, where we're trying to rid the criminals. Now it becomes a law enforcement issue. So is it realistic to build a wall and charge another government? Well, he's garnered a lot of support with his comments, so it's kind of difficult to say whether he would be able to actually pull that off.
Yeah, well, it's a difficult situation that a lot of local law enforcement are finding themselves in now, and the debate continues as they deal with the reality situation on the ground, and the Congress, at least, doesn't seem willing to step it up here. And unfortunately, we're out of time, Tom, but it's been great to have you here on Newsmax Now. We'll have you soon, back soon, and we'll talk more about the role of police.
My pleasure.
All right, Tom Whatley for us here on Newsmax Now. Much more to come. We're talking to Congressman Dan Benishek about what's going on in the VA hospitals around the country, and you're not going to like what he has to say.